Mr. Guida,
Got it. Thank you.
thank you. And I want to say once again, good morning, everyone, to the our first bylaws committee meeting this morning. And in attendance, we have Miss Noreen Copeland Miller
Here.
and Miss Rosa Hill, and
Here.
also have staff members Miss Sharon Gordon and Mr. Guida.
Good morning, everyone.
All righty. With that, Mr. Guida had sent out an agenda, and do I have any? Can I get an approval for the agenda?
So move. I know Reen move. We accept the agenda as presented.
All righty.
I second.
Thank you very much. The agenda is pretty straightforward in terms of reviewing our bylaws, and you should have also received from Mr. Guida the bylaws that were highlighted that I had noted some corrections, some basic corrections in terms of page location in the table of content. And then also, Ms. Miller, I believe you had you wanted to discuss a particular part of the bylaws as well. Could you
Yes.
please share?
Okay. I'm trying to pull up my bylaws just a moment.
Okay.
Mr. Henderson, if you would like, I can try sharing my screen with the bylaws that you sent.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So if we want to try to do that, I can. This will be an experiment. So
That's fine. Yeah,
so
I didn't know we could do that in WebEx. I'm so used to it in Teams and oh, there it is. How about that?
if there's
Perfect.
any pages or anything, everyone please feel free to let me know what you want me to do.
Okay.
Okay.
If you could increase the size of that and then scroll down to page number 3, it should show the highlights of there they are. Very good. So in these, and by all means, if anybody has any input or comment along the way and how we might want to address these, um, please make mention of it. Miss Miller, did you identify what you specifically wanted to
I
address?
wanted us to review Article 8, standing advisory committees in section 1.
Okay. Article 8.
The standing committees and
Okay, we
the
will
dialogue.
certainly do that.
It's some language in there that I did want us to, and I'm trying to get back to it.
And I'm glad you brought that up because there was I was reached out to contacted by the South Shore Advisory Council,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a question that I'd like to present to this committee for discussion as well. But to just start off with, the as you all know, I was attempting to um, create the bylaws document so that it's easy access, where the table of content is linked directly to the specific articles, which will make it a lot easier to find what we're seeking instead of scrolling through a bunch of pages. And then that's when I discovered that the page numbers did not um, agree with the referred page. So, do we need to go through each of these? Do you want to look at each one of them, beginning with on page 3, section 6, additional duties? Um, I can quickly go through these. It says that it's on page 19 when actually it's on page 18, and I think that was the
Okay.
same for uh, section 6 and 7. Scrolling down on Article 6, we have the regular meetings, sections 1 and 2, regular meetings and special meetings, noted on page 20 and 21, when actually, let's see here. Let's I believe.
It says it's only on page 20, so only 20, not 20 and 21.
Thank you. Thank you. That's right. Yeah. So it should only be page 20, correct?
Okay.
It's been a minute since I've looked at that. And then the special meetings section 2 is actually on page 20 and 21.
Okay. We can make those changes, all these changes quite easily, obviously.
Okay. And again, these are all formatted changes. They're not content change. So
Right.
if you all are good with this and with the observations, and hopefully you had a chance to look at them, we'll go ahead and move forward in talking more about the content with regards to Article 8 and the standing committees. Is that agreeable?
Yes.
That is agreeable, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Ms. Copeland Miller, I turn the floor over to you.
Okay, I'm still searching through it. It was a section in there that talks about the composition of the committees, and of course I'm having a little problem locating it this morning.
Let's see
But
here.
bear with me because it's about must live in the designated area or have interest. I'm sorry.
Let's see here.
I am so sorry, Mr. Henderson. I should have been better prepared. I had a little problem here opening up my bylaws.
That's
So,
okay.
Ms. Noreen, is that under the committees or the board, the standing board?
I'm not sure, Ms. Hill. It could be help me out here a little bit. It may be I'm reading back through it now. So,
Miss Miller, this is Sharon. If I may provide feedback, there is details on the composition of the board, and there is details on the composition of the executive committee, which is Article 7, Section
okay.
1B.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Gorin.
And it's if possible, so it's not like a. So just for your reference. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So you say that's Article 7 under Executive Committee, Section 1B, Section 1 under Officers. In order to transact any business of the Executive Committee must have a quorum of 3. The Executive Committee, as possible, should reflect the 1/3 public, 1/3 other, and 1/3 low income, or representatives of the low income composition of the full CAB CSBGB based on nominees' availability and willingness to serve. Is that the one, Ms. Copeland Miller?
Just one moment, sir. I'm sorry. Bear with me here. I got to read through it because at one point I did. Okay. I think it's more of the composition of the committees, but I want to make sure that, and I'm not finding it there.
So, Ms. Noreen, while you're looking, if you could share with us the basis of your concern, maybe
What?
help address where it might be located, if that's okay.
Okay, what it says is that in one position you have to live in the low income area. Then it has slash interest, but I'm not even.
So
That's my concern. It's like a double standard in the wording. Either you have to live in the area or you do not have to.
So that looks like it falls on the CAB composition. which is supposed to be on page 8 based on the current numbering.
Page 8. Let me go back. Thank you, Ms. Young. Okay, I think it's in section C that I'm concerned with. And on page 8, and you're right, Ms. Hill, thank you for the low-income representative shall be identified through a democratic selection process conducted in either of the following 3 methods. And that's in C, in section, on page 11, in section
Okay.
C.
Okay, and please, what is your concern again?
Where it says the low-income representative shall be identified through a democratic selection process conducted in either of the following 3 methods or by a combination of the at-large election to the entire area on significant service. To qualify as a representative of a low income, a person must be 18 years of age or older, either in a low income person or clearly or representative of the low income individual and families, and must reside in the service area.
Okay, so that's on page 12, after
Yeah,
item number 3,
right.
beginning that paragraph. Okay.
And that's a concern because it's like a double standard. It's saying on page 11, it's saying one thing, then when you get down to page 12, there's difference. The requirements seem to be more than one requirement. And I think when you brought it up at the meeting, that the council boards, that's one of the recruitment tools that we use.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are representing low income areas. So I think that we may need to review, revise, and make some recommendations to clarify exactly what's going to be the criteria for representation. Am I making any sense to you guys? Is that, I know it's a little early and I'm still drinking my coffee, so.
I'm just trying to, so, okay, so I do see the page 12, and it's on page 11. Where's the discrepancy you find? Is it
Okay,
after C?
yeah, after C, which goes over on to 12.
Right.
The representative of the low income section.
Mr. Henderson, Ms. Miller, may I?
Please, yes, ma'am.
The CAB composition is actually a mandate through the Community Service Block Grant. So the Block Grant Act, so we cannot modify that. It's also reflective in the resolution, which would require approval by the Board of County Commissioners to make any changes to that. In regards to whether the low income representative must also reside in the target area, I would need to do a little more research, not unless Mr. Guida has information on this, on if that can be changed, but we can't change any state mandates, any mandates within the Community Service Federal Block Grant Act. So that is standard.
Ms. Gordon, oh, sorry. Ms. Gordon, I was going to add, if you want to change the language about target, I'm not sure how that would work. I will know that you do that for a low income individual. You do have to preside in a low income area. I know that when our last monitoring that we had with the state, when they were going through the board member files for the low income area, they do require staff to provide how that, to confirm that the individuals representing the low income are living in a low income area. So that is a challenge, and goes along with what Ms. Gordon is saying, that it is part of the grant that those 7 or the 1/3 of the low income individuals are living in a low income area.
Okay.
So Derek and Sharon, so everyone, based on what I see here, there's one word. It says must live or reside in the service area, not a low income service area. So is it specific to the area that they're being recommended to represent, or do they live in any low income area in Hillsborough County?
I believe that's a direct language from the resolution, and I believe when it was put in the resolution, I believe it was to mean the service area as in Hillsborough County, so you could live in any low income area within Hillsborough County. So it would be a little inconvenient for someone, but I guess it's possible if you lived in a low income area in UCRC, but we're also on the advisory council in South Shore. I only say inconvenient because you'd be going pretty far for those meetings, but you would still qualify.
And just to follow up with what Mr. Grito was saying, it is in the resolution, it states in the target neighborhood served. So it does restrict individuals to reside in the area that they're representing.
Okay, so in the proclamation, it says the wording is just a little bit different than the wording in the bylaws. So in order to be transparent, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that if we are going to operate based on what is written in the proclamation, that the 2 documents match with the same language.
Ms. Hill, you said that you are reading where it states that it says live or reside in a.
Yes, so if you look at the paragraph under number 3, for the qualifications, the last sentence says must live/reside in the service area. And staff is saying that they must live and reside in the area in which they're, representing not just the county as a whole.
Okay, no, I see live or reside in the service area. I don't see live or reside in a service area. I thought you said that was written into the bylaws.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm asking. I'm asking for the language to be the same.
Okay.
Because Sharon just said, repeat what you said that's in the bylaws, Sharon, please.
Do you have?
In the proclamation.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Do you have the resolution in front of you? It's an appendix to the bylaw
It's at the end of the bylaw.
Yeah, it's so it's section 3 of the resolution, which says composition, A2, and so just so that you can read it for yourselves and see what I'm talking about.
In the target neighborhood served. Mm-hmm. So it's just that the bylaws doesn't spell out the target neighborhood served.
Yeah, because it says the county will define what constitutes a target neighborhood. So, because what does at large stand for?
Where are you reading at large?
Well, we have an at large member like in the low income sector, okay, at large. And it's on the committee. It's not on here. I'm just saying, using that word, but it is in the bylaws. But, and I guess my concern is one of the training that I was in, when that presenter presented from the national level at that conference, they said you did not have to live in a low income area to represent the low income sector. You could have an interest in the community or work in the community, but you didn't have to reside.
Right. On page 12, under representatives of low income sector, item number 1 does say it's at-large election to represent an entire area or neighborhood serviced.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, which is the low income representative of CAB CSBG shall be identified through democratic selection process conducted in either the following 3 methods or by a combination of the 3. 1, at-large election to represent an entire area or neighborhood serviced. 2, from a significant service or community organization known by the CAB CSBG, whose membership is composed of primarily low-income persons, and its membership has democratically elected the designated CAB representative. And 3, a community resource center advisory board that is constituted of low-income residents or their representatives, and which is a significant community organization that represents the local neighborhood district in which one of Hillsborough County's community resource centers is located. The membership of the advisory board will democratically elect the representative who will serve the CAB and CSBG. So it does kind of make it a little nebulous in terms of, does a person have to live in a low income area? For me, and maybe I'm not reading it right, and especially going back to your point, Ms. Miller, with regards to at large, number 1, at large election to represent an entire area or neighborhood serviced. So conceivably with that, I suspect a person from the university area could be elected to serve as a representative if they're considered low income in West Central or even Plant City. Am I reading this incorrectly? Thoughts?
Well, yeah, thank you for reading that out loud, because it certainly help me to internalize my thoughts. So thank you for that, Mr. Henderson. When I look at Article C, as it talks about the low income sector, it seems to give you 3 choices, 1, 2, or 3, and it appears that we've been using one area to verify a person can be in the low income sector. But when I read this, it's like you have 3 different choices, because it says the following 3 or by a combination of the 3. Either. It doesn't say it has to be all 3, and it does not say that they, from that my perspective, once I read it at large, clears up a lot for me.
Yes, ma'am. And to point out again, going back to Section C, the representative of low income sector, at least 1/3 of the CAB members shall be representatives of low income sector, even though they themselves may not be low income individuals and must live and reside in the service area. That's talking about the CAB members, but they may not be low income individuals and must live / reside in the service area. Is that a little confusing?
It's confusing to me because it's and then too, again, with the 5 target areas. What are the 5 target areas that we're looking at? Ms. Gordon, either one of you can help.
I'm sorry. I believe the original 5 target areas have been Lee Davis, Plant City, South Shore, University Community Resource Center area, and West Tampa. That's up in at the top of section C.
Okay,
The
so
top-
in
yeah.
that university area, is that entails the northern part of Hillsborough County, which would go over to Town and Country in that area as well? Because it seemed to, and I think that was one of our concerns that we had before when Ms. Lewis was on the board, because it appears that that area gets left out, the Town and Country area, because they don't have a neighborhood resource center that goes that far north, unless they would fall up on the university.
And Miss Lewis, if I remember correctly, had a unique role with the CAB in that she represented the mayor's office, did she not?
No, she did not. Mrs.
She did not.
Spearman, no, she wasn't appointed. No, she came from our advisory council.
Right.
Yeah, she was a low income representative.
Right.
I believe she might have been at large because
Yeah, she was.
she's an at-large member as well in the low-income sector area, but she did reside in the Town and Country, so it did kind of, as Ms. Copeland-Miller mentioned, kind of fill that information void that we currently have.
Mm-hmm.
And just, Ms. Miller, just in regards to the residing, that's, I just double checked just to make sure that I'm accurate, is this is actually, it's a federal, it's the community service block grant requirement. That the representative must live in the service area. So it's we're following a federal mandate basically at this point.
Okay, and I think that when we get our training, that we will see that has changed somewhat.
Okay.
Because I know in the training I was in, they said you did not have to live in a low income area to represent the low income population, but you can show interest or work in that area or.
Right, and that's what that very first sentence of under section C, representatives of low income sector. That's exactly what it's saying. The more I read it, the more I think about it. That even though they themselves may not be low income individuals, and the word "must" is what's throwing me off, and must reside in the service area. It's either they themselves may not be low income individuals and not live/reside in the service area. Or is it saying that they have to live? Because otherwise that sentence is a little awkward.
Mr. Henderson, this is Maria. Sorry I'm late
Maria, welcome.
joining. I had to fill Audrey's void this morning at the office, so I apologize for being late. I'm sorry if this has already been covered, but just wanted to reiterate what Ms. Gordon stated. I have the information of the board composition that the federal government states it has to be followed for tripartite boards for community service block grants. And it does say the individual who resides in the geographical area it doesn't mean that the person has to be low income. It just means that the person has to reside in the low income area.
Okay, so then the word "and" should be the word "but."
Exactly.
Okay, that's what it is. Thank you for that clarification. Does anybody else see that or have comment on that?
Would you read that with the new wording?
So it should, I think it should read, at least 1/3 of the CAB CSBGB members shall be representatives of the low income sector, even though they themselves may not be low income individuals, but must live/reside in the service area. So even though, for example, since important to remember our dear departed Miss Lewis, even though she was not low income, she did live in the area. So this sentence is saying they themselves may not be low income individuals and must live/reside in the service area.
Okay, so and I guess that's where I get my concern is when we have an individual that lives in that area, but some way they're saying they're not in the low income sector, but they're at large. I guess and we have to, I don't know what constitutes the well, I know the low income area. I'm just a little bit confused. I hear what you're saying, Ms. Emerson. And at large, how does that fit in, Gillis?
It means at large for the Hillsborough County because it's large. It's a large county. So, like, let's for commissioners, we have certain commissioners that are assigned for specific areas, and then the other ones are at large. So they serve for the entire community. So that would be the same thing. Although they are, you know, on the board, they're actually representing the entire area. In other words, like Miss Lewis, when she was on our board, although she did have a soft spot in her heart for the town and country area, she really looked at all areas when she was talking about programming and processes. Okay.
With that in mind, and I'm sorry, Ms. Miller, did you have any other?
Go ahead.
With that in mind, Commissioners Pat Kemp, I believe, is at-large commissioner, and Stacy White, I believe, is an at-large commissioner, I believe. With that in mind, should we as a board be trying to fill those seats? And
those aren't seats.
Those aren't seats.
No, the at-large really is that they are not tied to a advisory committee. They're just representing that area. There's really the only ones that are tied to actually a committee are the ones who are representing or are part of those advisory committees. Remember, we have 7 seats and there's not 7 advisory committees. So those other ones are at large.
Okay, so when we have a advisory committee member that's actually tied to the advisory committee and then their name is submitted, but they are disqualified because of their address.
Right. They cannot override because they're on the advisory committee. They still have to meet the requirement of living in the low income area.
Okay, so.
And Maria, when you say the low income area, so if they're on the West Central Advisory Committee and they're recommended, they have to live within the area that the West Central Advisory Committee represents?
No, what they have to live in is in a low income sector. And we use the GIS mapping that shows what those areas are. So we would type in, or actually Derek does it, he types in that individual's address and it comes up whether they're in that area or not. I hope that helps. And I just wanted to, and I'm going to have Derek jump in a minute, but this is one of the things that when we're monitored, DEO actually comes in and has us run the individuals who are on the board representing the low income sector. They actually have us provide verification that these individuals live in a low income sector. So this is something that we would be dinged on if during a monitoring, if those individuals do not live in a low income sector, which is why Derek is so hard at ensuring that when a CAB member moves that we are notified so we can ensure that we're in compliance.
Okay, so when you, thank you, Ms. Gillis. So I guess the areas, then my question would be to define at large, do the areas ever change, or have you all made any updates to the designated areas in recent years?
No, at large can be anywhere in Hillsborough County. Those barriers have not changed and I don't think they'll be changing. So the entire Hillsborough County is, where that person could reside if they live in a low income sector of Hillsborough County. So I guess if we keep in mind that the person has to live in a low income sector in Hillsborough, that would kind of take out that question mark that everybody has in their mind of where the person has to be.
Okay, so if they work in a low income sector,
No, it says reside. They
Yeah.
must live.
Live and reside in there, right?
okay. So do we have okay, I'm gonna just let that go because I'm the at-large section. So we should not refer anybody from our advisory council for at-large section if they don't live in the designated area.
If they do not live in a low income sector, it doesn't matter if they're an advisory board member, committee that wants to be on the board, or an at-large member, they cannot be part of the board. It has to be someone who lives in a low income sector as designed by the GIS mapping of the low income sectors for Hillsborough County.
Just if I can provide some examples of our at-large members. Dr. Smalls is an at-large member because he's not tied to an advisory board but lives in a low-income sector, as is Ms. Hargret. However, Ms. Anderson is actually an at-large member, even though she is on the Plant City Advisory Board, because Mr. Simmons is on the Plant City Advisory Board or East Hillsborough, and he represents the East Hillsborough. So Jennifer is considered an at-large, even though she is, because they already have one member filling one of those seats, if that helps out at all. So it can be, as Ms. Gillis is mentioning, you don't have, if you're not tied to an advisory council like Dr. Smalls or Ms. Hargret, then you would be considered at large. But if you have more members within an advisory council that are interested in serving on the board and they are elected by the board, that second person would also be an at-large, even though they're tied to West Central or South Shore or Plant City, like Ms. Anderson is at this time.
But Dr. Small, Derek, I'm sorry, and I probably need to update our directory because he is tied to the West Central Region Advisory Council.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, that's how he came.
I was not aware. I apologize, but I know originally when he had come in as a low-income representative, he was not. He would still be considered at large because currently, Ms. Copeland-Miller, you are the representative for the West Central Region at this time. So, but that's good information to know.
But that doesn't change anything in terms of his representation.
Correct. He would still be low income sector at large while Ms. Copeland-Miller remains on the board.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess maybe with that, and you're saying, Maria, that this is language from the national office that has to be in there for low income representatives.
Yes, that is correct. I'm looking
So
at
and I guess my question would be, so any other board members, any council members, would they fit in under representative, I guess, of an organization? If we sent another council member from our board and they were denied because of their address, what would be the recourse?
Currently, we don't have any open seats for the public area. But once one became available, then that person could be supplied to the board for their recommendation and seating if appropriate. But at this point, at this time, we don't have a seat available in that section.
Okay, and that because the one that Dr. Wright left, that was an appointed one. That's in the public sector.
Yes, ma'am.
The commissioner. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That would be a commissioner seat, and
right.
it would be the commissioner to appoint someone to be their representative.
Okay. And I know I have a call to see if they had someone in mind to appoint. I have not heard back from Commissioner Miller on that section because I think we're down 2 members.
Well, and then also, as I had mentioned earlier in the meeting, I was contacted by a representative from South Shore, Sandy Council actually, and she has a concern that there's no real representation for South Shore's interest on the Community Action Board, and felt that there should be, that the representation from the Community advisory councils or boards is the guidelines were a little prohibitive, since that they're unable to really recruit someone who is in the low income sector to be represented. So I don't know if we have any thoughts on that, any ways around this.
Well, Mr. Henderson, if I may, I would like to see, and I know the bylaws is the bylaws and the resolution, all of that, but I still would like to, and Maria Gillis, you all can help me out with this. I think that it may be, with this, especially with the situation that's going on in this country, that I think some things may have changed because people's living situations are different. But I would like to see the advisory councils have some kind of flexibility. It looks like even if people are interested in serving, they're being denied because of the language, I guess. And
Well, Ms. Miller, not to interrupt, I guess, and I had a great conversation with Ms. Council, Mr. Henderson, the other day, and I encouraged her, especially during this times that these meetings are virtual, that individuals can log in and see what the board's doing, and it's easier. I did encourage her and other advisory members to watch the board members, the board meetings, and provide input to the advisory councils and what's going on, and provide even questions to staff for for answers. But as far as changing the composition or adding more seats or changing the verbiage, at this time, I do not see the federal government changing the way that the tripartite board is put together. I understand what you're saying, but at this point, I would encourage the board members that we currently have to be the voice for those communities. If the South Shore area does feel like they don't have a voice, I know, Mr. Henderson, you live in that area, maybe they could provide that input to you and you could be their voice. I think there's different ways that we can provide, input to this board, not necessarily having a person seated at the board.
And I agree with you, Ms. Gillis. Thank you for sharing that you did get a chance to speak with Ms. Council. The other option also is that we do have Mr. Morales, who represents Enterprising Latinas, and when they say the Greater South Shore area, that's inclusive of Gibsonton, Apollo Beach, Ruskin, Sun City, as well as Waimama, where Enterprising Latinas resides, and Enterprising Latinas actually has a member on the advisory council. Ileana, can't think of Ileana's last name, but at any rate, she, and I would encourage, and I did encourage Ms. Council to make sure that, that Ileana is in communication with her coworker at Enterprising Latina, who is a CAB member, and that, we'll be able to make sure that South Shore interest is also brought to the board. So I do agree with you, Ms. Gillis. There are other options, but if it's federal guidelines that we're trying to adhere to, and knowing that they're not going to change anytime soon, knowing how quickly the government moves, we'll definitely have to rely on those other options.
And Henderson, thank you for that, and Ms. Gillis. I just want to say one more thing, and as I'm looking in here, it says board maintain and support mutual objectives to address issues that affect persons who live at or below the federal poverty guide level. And we do know that recently, especially with the COVID-19 special funding, whatever they changed they raised the federal poverty guidelines. So those are different things that's going on in the society. I just want to see why we can say we can do this rather than we can't on different levels, because things change. Poverty guideline level just changed, maybe just for that one time, but guess what? It did happen. So I foresee other changes. And that's just my point. In the bylaws, it's time, I think they have to be revised in 2 years, but I would like to see this board, our board, which is our judicial duty to make sure that we are all inclusive from all areas of the demographics. And I'm not sure when the last time that section was upgraded, but I do know that in town and country area, there's really not representation. North, the university resource center is there off of Fletcher, but what's further north over in that area? And we know they don't have a representative. It just appears that we want to make sure that we are all inclusive. And from my perspective, of all Hillsborough County, unincorporated Hillsborough County area. And it seems like we're lacking in that area to have some representation.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point. Okay,
thank you for sharing your point and the concerns. And I think it definitely is something worth taking back to the board, Chairman Hill, and maybe a concerted effort can be made to really try to do a little bit more digging with the key players in those areas. I know the president of the university area CDC. She actually was my vice chair when I was chairman of the Florida Alliance of Community Development Corporations, and they are really taking a very active role in developing that community out there. So maybe, and I really don't have much contact with anyone in town and country anymore since the passing of our dear Miss Lewis, but certainly I'm sure among our board members that there's someone who knows someone who can really advocate and try to get some representation in that location. Again, still abiding by the bylaws that we have, structures that we have set in our bylaws. So that's going to be important.
Mr. Henderson, for point, I think what would be helpful, because maybe, and we haven't done this in a while, and I think it would be very helpful for the entire board, is to maybe verbalize to the entire board who is representing what area and where, what section. Just as a point of reference, you represent the commissioner that is from the university area. So technically you are the representative for that university area. So I think it would be helpful for the entire board to see what sections each of the appointed board members represent, and also the low income section, and also the public. I think it would be important for us to see on a map what sections each of you represent.
That's an excellent suggestion, and it definitely will bring to light in terms of the areas that are covered and areas that we as board members should be looking at to making sure that those areas are being addressed. So do you propose will staff be able to put something together like that briefly in terms of a pictograph, icons, or what have you?
Absolutely, I think that would be very helpful. And to Ms. Miller's point, it would identify any areas that we do need to maybe tap into. And if we can't get an actual board member to represent, maybe heighten the need to the other board members, so that way we can kind of look in those communities and see what the needs are.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you so much, Ms. Gillis, for that information. And which, again, to my point, I had no idea, and I should have, because I remember when Ms. Dr. Wright recruited from that commissioner to appoint Mr. Henderson. Mm-hmm. And to my point, and I'm glad you were there and that with that commissioner, but it didn't dawn on me that you were representing that area until Ms. Gillis just stated that. So I think that all of this warrants for us to look at our bylaws. And again, I think when we get this board training coming in about Memorandum 81 and all of that, I think these are questions that we definitely want to ask from the national level of the trainers, because things change. Nothing remains the same. And in this society that we're in right now, things are changing. So it's good to know our representatives. It's good to know where they are. But again, we're missing certain segments in Hillsborough County that do not have immediate representation, have the pulse on what's going on in those neighborhoods. And to your point, Mr. Henderson, University area, before they've had representatives, but it's always been difficult to
Right. No,
really.
I remember that. I
Mhm.
remember that first coming on board when we had Karen Childs, if you remember, and
Mhm.
they had a lot of activity, but it just kind of fallen off. And I know I was struggling trying to make sure we kept South Shore relevant, but I'm I'm personally excited about the idea of seeing that map. And
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
Chairwoman Hill agrees that it's something that we can even forward to the Board of County Commissioners, so they will have an idea that their locations are being properly represented. And do we have any commissioner seats that are not represented to the board
Rep-
at this time?
the Representative Miller, because that seat is up for
Election.
election next month. So he's
Mm.
not appointed anyone yet. I did approach. I had talked with Mr. Colvin to see if he had someone in mind, and I have not heard back from Commissioner Miller.
Okay.
Because I was trying to fill that seat, but I haven't had any luck in it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I agree with you that this will be a great document to have. Maybe not just pass out internally. I don't know if it would be something that we put on the community action on the website, so the general public can see that we do identify specific areas and have representation on our board for these specific areas. Another
absolutely.
reason would be internally for us is with all the redevelopment that's happening throughout the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County, some of these areas might be changing
Mm-hmm.
as far as their status. The new redevelopment project with the House Authority is Robles Park, but it also includes Tampa Heights. So it will be good for me, to see right now where things are and who represents what, and bring that to the entire board so we all can see it. So, I don't know if we just make a decision at this meeting to have it done, but I do agree that it should be done and it'll be a good tool to have on hand.
Ms. Gillis, is this something that we have to take to the board in order for you all to proceed, or can this be something that you all prepare and bring forward for discussion at
I,
the board meeting?
I think that staff, actually, I'm already pulling up the map to see how I can get this together, but I think it's a good visual. A lot of times, as Ms. Miller stated, you know that you're representing a commissioner, but you really, until you see it visually and see what your boundaries are, it's you kind of lose sight. So I think it's important for, as Ms. Hill said, to have something visual where each member knows, and honestly, for programming going forward, if there's something that needs to happen in a certain area, we know who the go-to people are in that area. So I think it's a good visual. Staff, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to try to work on this with Derek as quickly as possible. We're knee deep into R3, but we're going to do our best to get it to the board by the next meeting.
Understood. We appreciate your diligence in trying to make that happen. And just for the sake of, it'd be great to see it in color. And even though I'm not a fraternity man, I do like the color green for my areas because it's all about growth for wherever I am. Okay, I'll stop.
No taken.
All righty, let me go ahead and get ready to wrap up. But the things that and that are going to be done is that we're going to definitely correct the table of content and the locations of the different sections. And then I didn't get a feel, can we or should we bother with changing that one word under the representatives of the low income sector, where replacing the word but and with the word but. So it should read at least 1/3 of the CAB CSBG members should be representatives of the low income sector, even though they themselves may not be low income individuals, but live/reside in the service area. Does that make sense, or should we just leave it with the word and?
At this point, I think, with all the explanations we received, and now that we're going to get a geographical map that we can always reference back to, the word "and" is okay, depending on how much work it would be to just change one word.
It would be fine for staff to change that at the direction of the board's request.
Okay, so it doesn't require any major.
No.
Okay.
And, we could change it, and then the board would have to approve the changes based on the recommendations of the committee at the next board meeting.
Right, we would need a vote in order to.
But changing one word is not that difficult.
Okay. So is it the consensus? I mean, I'm good either way, but I see how it could be. We can have this conversation again, maybe with a changing of the guards and somebody else coming onto the board, and maybe even somebody from the community questioning that it's not clear. So my vote would be Mr. Henderson to go ahead and change it, since it's not going to take that much of work.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Miller, do you have any comments?
So it's completely clear.
Right. Ms. Miller, do you have any input on that? Maureen, are you there? You're muted.
I'm sorry, I second it.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was muted, sorry.
Very good. Okay. Alrighty. With that, is if there's nothing else in terms of our bylaws, good for the of the order. Anything?
So Mr. Henderson, Mr. Chair, before we close out, so if we go back to page 12 and look under the 3 qualifications, and we look at that paragraph, and it says must live and reside in the service area. Are we good with that?
Yes, I did highlight that. Well, and again, this is qualified representative low income person must be 18 years of age, older, either low income person or clearly a representative of low income individuals and families, and must live / reside in the service area to qualify as a representative of the low income. I think that is appropriate, and again, I guess this is in keeping with what the federal guidelines are. This is talking about to qualify as a representative of the low income. Those representative of low income are democratically. Do you feel that is in?
For me, that word "or" gives you choices. The following 3 methods, or by a combination of the 3.
But we don't. But the staff is saying that we don't have that choice based on the federal guidelines.
And I understand that, Ms. Henderson. I think that. I'm sorry, Ms. Hill.
No problem.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, what the staff is saying. But again, the word "are" has a different meaning than "but."
Well,
for me,
the word "but" replaced the word "and." So
Okay.
either a low-income person or clearly a representative of low-income individuals and families. Okay, yeah. So then we would replace the word "but" here as well. But must live,
Okay.
reside in the service area.
Okay.
So they're either a low-income person or they're a representative of a low-income area. No, that's a different context.
See, the only thing I was trying to point out is when you say service area, and I'm just looking from a broad perspective. I know we in this call know the answer, but from a broad perspective, the service area is Hillsborough County. but we know that that person, that individual has to live in the service area that they represent. Make sense? So is there a way that we could say one or two words that narrows it down to a person understanding that, yes, the service area is Hillsborough County, but if you do not live in this target area that you're being recommended for, then you do not qualify for the position. Does that make sense?
It does, Ms. Hill, and I think when they say service area, they kind of spell out what they're looking for when they name the different resource centers. So they're naming Lee Davis, Plant City, South Shore University. And I think that those are the areas that they're considering for service area.
To clarify, it does, but the reason why I think we left it vague, and I would have to go back to my notes with the last bylaws committee that we had probably a couple of years ago. We left it broad because the at-large would also represent a service area. It's just not in those advisory areas. So that's why it was left that way. Reside in the service area, but must live at a low income, if that makes sense.
Okay, now see, that's a piece from a broad perspective, you know, just anybody reading this wouldn't understand. So that's the point I'm trying to make. What is the reason why it was left vague? And is it necessary to define it, or is it appropriate just to leave it the way it is? So we don't have this conversation again for future people coming in.
Just in staff's perspective, I think if you leave it as service area is Hillsborough County, as Ms. Miller stated, you know, low income looks very different today than it will, you know, in 10 years and that it did 10 years ago. So I think if you leave it as service area is Hillsborough County, knowing that the board would like representation for each of their advisory councils to also, you know, be represented. But I think if you leave it as service area Hillsborough County, that would, you know, leave it open for when things change. You know, who would have known that the Riverview Brandon area was going to explode like it has, you know, 20 years ago? You would have never known that, or Town and Country per se. So if we leave service area as Ms. Miller stated, as Hillsborough County, and then have those advisory councils spelled out, I think you're safe.
That's a good point, Ms. Gillis. When I was working for Florida Home Partnership down in Ruskin, and when they changed the poverty guidelines, the USDA, where Florida Home Partnership received its funding, also changed its mapping in terms of what they considered rural districts. And we came very close to having a location where we were building homes in Ruskin, no longer declared a rural district, which meant that the funding from the USDA would have been immediately cut off, even though we have had houses in progress of being built. Well, we advocated on behalf and went to Washington and did what we had to do, our due diligence, and they decided to go ahead and demark the location as no longer rural, just one block north, well, actually a couple of streets north of where we were building homes, which is along College Drive, 674. And boy, where we were sweating bullets on that day, because they could have easily included, and I think they wanted to include further south into Ruskin as no longer as a rural district. And so these poverty guidelines are being changed easily because of these $300,000 plus homes that are being built in these low income areas, like in Waimama, and they're changing what's really being declared as low income. And the low income folks are living all outside of those property developments. So just to point out, there are only two areas that's in this document that lists service area, and unless I'm missing it. One is where we were just speaking about that service area is mentioned, and then again on page 12 and on page 13, right after the item C, representative of low income sector. Those are the only two locations I'm able to find any mention of the combination service area. So, but again, I'm in agreement with Ms. Gillis that we may want to not define ourselves into a corner, that we'll have to come back and redefine ourselves again.
The other thing, Mr. Henderson, that I'd like to mention, and I think this is where Ms. Miller was going, is we also have a 2020 census that is being collected at this time. And I think that the picture that that's going to paint going forward is going to be very different than the picture that it was 10 years ago. So I think it's for this board to maybe, look when that report comes out of how we want to look at how our service area is looked at and what areas we're actually going to tap into. She's right. The map is changing. And I think when we get the census report, we're going to see that those changes affect who are the communities that we're serving. So I think definitely this bylaws committee and this board is really going to have to re-look at things once that report comes out.
Thank you. Are there any other good of the order? Good for the order. All righty. If there being none, I really appreciate you all meeting to discuss this. It really did highlight some things that we didn't even think about, and that we can bring to the board and even make us a more effective board and even a more dynamic social services department in serving our community.
Mr. Henderson, I'm sorry. I had one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
You said you were going to hyperlink the hyperlink.
Yes, I'll have that ready, and Derek, again, this map I'm really excited about. I'll be more than happy to make adjustments to the bylaws if you want. Otherwise, feel free to go ahead and make the adjustments and get it to me, and then I'll be happy to do the hyperlink and get that back to distribute to the board.
Okay, Mr. Henderson, based on recommendations, I will make those changes and get it to you as soon as possible.
Excellent. Okay. All righty, you all. If there's nothing more, I want to thank you for your time. It is now 12:10. I thought we had a very productive first meeting. And thank you, Ms. Miller, for being so encouraging to make sure that we do have a meeting with our bylaws. This won't be the last meeting, because I'm sure other people will be more engaged with taking a closer look at our bylaws and making sure that it makes sense. There's no need to have a document that just doesn't make sense, or wording that doesn't make sense. So,
right. And Mr. Chair, thank you so much for doing this and bringing this up and doing the hyperlink. I just know now you're going to get more questions because they're going to be easy to find.
As long as I have you and Miss Miller on my side, and of course this dynamic staff, I have no worries. You all have a great day and even a greater week.
All right, you take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.